Well, the last 3 years have seen a radical change in terms of just transition. Also a radical change in terms of Europe's climate ambition. And what I think is really welcome is that just transition has made its way into kind of popular language. There's a recognition that to reach our climate ambition, we have to deal with the social dimension. And we see very hard law when it comes to climate ambition, very hard law when it comes to increasing the climate ambition with the Green Deal, with the Fit for 55 package, with the Repower EU package which has just come out. But the just transition dimension is left at the level of cooperation, exchange of good practice, some resources, very, very welcome. It's great that the Just Transition Fund has been, and the Just Transition mechanism has been created, but we're still lacking some of the basic levers so that working people who are impacted by the climate transition and the energy transition, that they can really influence the direction of that transition, that they have a voice in the process, that they're involved, and that they have a right to be involved in strategy making. So for us in the trade union movement, just transition is basically a synonym for anticipation of change. And at the moment, in terms of workers' rights at European level and in many member states, workers have the rights to be informed and consulted when a decision has already been taken. So it's a reactive right. When it's the decision to close a site, when it's the decision to make redundancies, then trade unions and workers are brought to the table to manage the social impact of those decisions. For us, just transition means reversing that, making it a proactive right around anticipation of change. And that means new rights for information and consultation, that workers are at the table at the start of decision making and not at the end to clear up the mess. So there's a change in terms of basic workers' rights and a right at European level to anticipation of change. We have an enormous skills challenge across Europe. We have a big skills shortage. In order to deal with that systemic problem of skills shortages and the need to ensure transition for individual workers, we think that we need to have a basic right to training for all workers, regardless of their contract, regardless of whether they are directly employed or they're employed in subcontractors of big companies, to ensure that workers maintain their employment prospects even if their jobs change. Potentially it's the Achilles heel of Europe if we don't get it right, because we can't reach our climate objectives if we don't have a workforce able to deliver those climate objectives. As trade unions, our basic bread and butter is industrial change. We're constantly negotiating industrial change, and climate action is just a different form of industrial change, but the scale of it is an industrial revolution. That's what we're involved in. So managing an industrial revolution, has anybody done that successfully in the past? There are very few examples. There are lots of bad examples, there are very few good examples, but there are some examples of people trying something different. Lots at the root of all of those industrial transformations is the need for mass reskilling and upskilling. And what the Swedish have negotiated, the government, the social partners together, is basically a right to training for every worker, and not just a paper right, which can't be used, but paid leave to actually upskill and retrain. That's investment in the workforce on a really impressive level, and it's that kind of initiative that we need to be seeing if we're going to achieve the social revolution which has to come alongside this industrial revolution. In order to deliver concrete just transition, the first starting point has to be you have to have the right people around the table to decide how that money is going to be spent. We know more or less how much money is coming to each region, and therefore the plan should be developed in an inclusive way with the people who are at the actual or the proverbial coalface at the table and not outside forced to kind of protest to get their voice heard. The skills gaps in the industries that we're phasing in are of a higher academic level, and that's the gap that we need to be filling with the Just Transition Fund and the coal regions in transition plans. Is how do we ensure that the opportunities which are being created are also available for today's workforce? And the only way to do that is to have comprehensive and targeted training plans for addressing the level of skills that workers have today and the skills which are necessary in the future. Other funds should be targeted to ensure that we don't end up with a situation that we see today where people are being made redundant as plants close, but they don't have the skills for the new jobs which are being phased in, and with all of the social consequences that that brings. Learning from each other is absolutely vital to try and get a good outcome for the people that we represent, whether it's the trade union members inside IndustriAll-Europe or whether it's the constituents inside a particular region. So I think that mutual learning is much underestimated in terms of the real value. For many of our industries, we're a generation away from 2050. We have time, but we don't have a lot of time, and we need the pace of just transition to step up. We need some of these core building blocks to be put in place. So my hope of being here is that people who haven't thought about how you could better integrate workers have a think and look at the examples that we bring to the table. And I'm, a sponge, listening to what other people are saying, identifying those examples, then to take them home, to question, well, what is it really a good example from our perspective? What's the view of the workers in that company, in that region which has been mentioned, in order that we strengthen that collective knowledge and we move everything forward.